Hello, my darlings. So good to see you. Normally, I'd say, welcome back to another exciting episode of Curse of Strahd. Haha! Psych! The first season's already out, the second season is currently being edited, and the third season's currently being played right now. I'm assuming you're watching this video having already seen Season 1 of Curse of Strahd. This will contain spoilers, and I will actually talk a little bit more in depth about what I decided to do and take some artistic liberties with in this game. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is some of the highlights of the game. As you may well know, most of my players, excluding Chase, who plays Zana, as well as myself, who used to play Irena, have all played or DM'd Curse of Strahd. So, having to jump into the DM seat like I have and take over the reins of the story was rather difficult to bring a unique and new experience to the table, especially when most of them have read it cover to cover. Some of them have even gone in depth and done their own research, so I deep dived into that shit. Like, I went deep. I did a ton of research all the way from 2nd edition to 5th edition on who Strahd is and where he's come from. Through that, I have been able to create some unique bosses for them that you won't see in the actual Curse of Strahd module. The first of which I would like to put in is the Headless Horseman. In fact, the Headless Horseman in certain other stories from my vast research that I've pulled from a variety of questionable sources was in fact his own Dark Lord somewhere in the lands of Mists and Veils. In his domain, the road was a trap, and every time you were on the road, you needed to make a save or something, or be trapped on the road and then get hunted by this thing that would right on by and cut your dang head off. You never see it coming. It turns out the Headless Horseman was in fact Ismark. Ismark was found back before I took over as DM with his head in a box. We found them at the Blue Water Inn, and Irena was devastated. Now, we have long since learned that Van Richten has a habit of putting people's heads in boxes. Why he's putting people's heads in boxes seems to be a great way to get information out of them. But I don't see him killing citizens that aren't turned or have become monsters, which means something must have happened to Ismark somewhere down the road. We learn a little bit more about that in Season 2, but a tragedy befell Season 2, and I'll get into that more a little bit later. Originally, the Headless Horseman's mechanic was supposed to be a high-speed chase all through the village of Barovia. We had Ez's cart, we had a spare horse, we had the party's cart and their horse, and they were going to go charging in and try and create this new and interesting way of chasing down the horseman who rides through these streets, ghosts on drive-by ready to hit you at certain intersections, while evading his deadly vorpal weapon. Now, things happened in Season 1 that I totally didn't expect to happen. Chance had a very quick change of heart and decided to go after Esmeralda. She was my PC, now she's a DM NPC, and I figured the party didn't need too much supervision for that long. But man did what he did, and lo and behold, Esmeralda is still the adopted NPC of the party, much to her chagrin, let me tell you what. The next boss I would like to talk about is the Mother Tree. We see this one in Episode 1 of Curse of Strahd. Not my best work, to be perfectly honest. All the audio is quiet. I had no idea what I was doing. I was editing for the first time. The Mother Tree you find after the entire battle on Yesterhill. Now, according to the books, the battle on Yesterhill was supposed to be a total party wipeout. Like, I'm talking people may not survive, so it is advised that maybe you tone this up and down and have the party really think their strategy before they tackle Yesterhill. Well, me being what I am and in a party full of level 6s, decided to kind of up the ante because I'm kind of extra like that. This tree I have decided to create as a series of boss battles throughout Barovia. You have the Headless Horseman, you have the Mother Tree, and there's a series of other ones throughout Barovia. I could technically do a boss battle run if I so chose, but I don't think anybody would have the stamina to just fight enemy after enemy in unique circumstance. That actually sounds really fun. I totally want to do that right now. Like, can we do that, guys? Like, is that a thing? The party was exhausted from that battle. They managed to survive, some of them only just, but now they face the Mother Tree, the one at the end of Yesterhill. I lovingly named the Mother Tree. It's actually a Gulthias tree, one of the original Gulthias trees created from an actual vampire from far, far back. She was he, they, it. It had a man's voice, but it was pregnant when they found it, and the thing was extracted for the ritual. The Mother Tree is an it. It had a huge army of plant blights around it. This thing is huge, I am telling you. They have got to go through some really interesting mechanics to take this down. Players, if you're listening, I highly recommend implementing the use of A, fly spells, or B, some kind of grapple tether to keep you away from the swarms of blights that will attack you from the ground. And hopefully we'll get to see that at some point in Season 3. The next boss battle I would like to talk about is the Solaire Cabal. We don't see them until the end of Season 1, and I have been hinting at them for quite some time. If you, my viewers, are very careful, you will see in a lot of my preludes I have alluded to many things that are in the works in the background that we do not see. Unfortunately, a lot of story elements can just feel left field if they're just thrown out into the middle of the game and we don't get a sense of what's going on. And the Solaire Cabal actually have a great big history to them. The Solaire Cabal are a series of monk-like assassins. They have milky white eyes, they're very zombie-like, and their lower jaw is completely ripped off. They are sworn to silence. They are a special kind of assassin in Barovia that live up in the hills by the Amber Temple, which comes into play as part of their story. Like everything else in Barovia, serve the Dark Lord, Strahd himself. The next thing I'd like to talk about are my players. I love my players. They're some of the best role players that I've role played with, and good role players are very difficult to find. First we have is Nyla. She is a waitress who came to Barovia in search of her fiancé, as we all know, lovely Reuven. I totally ship them, and originally, when the character Nyla came to Barovia, Rachel had insisted that he was engaged back when I first joined as a guest NPC, so that she wouldn't have to deal with weird love interests, and I totally don't blame her. There are some weird people who play D&D, myself included. She created this fiancé, and I felt like in the beginning she didn't have a lot of connection to him, so my goal for the character was to create this rich history of this relationship that she has with this man. The one person that she didn't give up on for 3 years after he left her, after proposing to her, saying that he had to take care of debts in some far-off land, and we have no idea what's in store for him, and slowly she's unraveling this mystery as I ask her every time, tell me a new memory, improv a new memory, tell me something else, and sure enough, she's created this magical relationship with this man, and we are all just in love with this couple, and it's totally amazing. The next person I'd like to talk about is Hildegard. Now, she's a goth queen, and I love her so much, and she puts on this really tough exterior, like, don't fuck with me, I'll kill you, and in some respects, that is a very accurate representation of that character. But one of the things I am so impressed by is the player Caro. She's my Canadian player. She comes all the way up from Montreal, or is it Quebec? Holy shit, Caro, don't yell at me, I totally forgot. But the French-speaking part of Canada, so English is her second language. We have gone toe-to-toe with some incredible roleplay dialogue battles with like morals and motives and how they clash with different perspectives, and I have been so proud of her. She is incredible stepping out of her little shell like that. We're very good friends now, and one of the things that I really enjoy about Hildy is not only she has this quick draw for the spell Calm Emotions, because everybody around her is just constantly freaking out. I also saw that in Barovia it says that it is a godless place. So while trying to really capture the charm of the land, I decided to sever her god's connection from her and instead put a surrogate in its place, which has led to some beautiful character developments. Now she has this incredible mysterious lantern with this blue candle that just flickers and creates this radius of light, this messenger, this sentinel of death. And I think she plays the part well, but unfortunately that role also involves watching people you grow close to fall in battle, but because she keeps them in her little lantern now, it's going to present a new obstacle and perchance a new path at some point in the future when she learns more about its secrets. The next one I would like to talk about is Zana. Zana has a special place in my heart. She's played by one of my best friends, Chase, who's a magnificent role player, but let me tell you, when combat starts and she gets angsty, she will rule lawyer your ass into the ground, and damn, sometimes I'm like up against a wall like, Chase, please, I get it, I read the book too. For Zana specifically, one of the things I absolutely love about the character is she will come to the wrong conclusions, just left field sometimes. Like, she gets this really dramatic rise and, oh my god, they killed Kenny. I think Strahd wants to take us to the ball. And it's like, Zana, what? No, we're talking about Kenny. Where did you get that? And it's so cute every time it happens because everybody just stops and goes, what? And we've just chalked it up to how Zana is this new, fresh face in this strange land. She comes from a forest and she only ever talked to trees, and so she's very sheltered, and I love watching her come out of her shell in this dark land, but I also really sympathize for Zana because druids are so difficult to play in Barovia because, newsflash, Strahd is the land. So what are you gonna do when your connection to the land is suddenly severed? I mean, you're kind of boned. Zana is a very unique druid. She connects more with plants in that regard. And unfortunately, plants seem to be a very powerful theme I have hiccups! With the mother tree being what it is, Zana has some very interesting character arcs in play, especially with the tarot cards that Esmeralda gave them in session 0 of my joining the campaign. And I can go into that just a little bit in a second. The next one I want to talk about is Yog. Now, Odni is our Norwegian player. He comes to us from the other side of the gosh dang planet, and we have to play in the mornings just so we can make sure he is completely involved. And sometimes we don't get him, sometimes we do, but whenever we do, he is full of witty one-liners, repartee, and some very clever isms that just throw me overboard. Like, I'm not ready for it. Yog is a really funny character. He's full of shenanigans, but he's also unfortunately playing a barbarian in a roleplay heavy game. And I almost feel bad for him sometimes because all the girls are like chittering like fish over here. Fish? All the girls are chittering like birds over here, and then Yog is over here just like, when can I hit something? And it's so funny. I did have a character arc for Yog in mind. As per his reading with Esmeralda's cards, like I've mentioned, his treasure to find in Barovia was the Spear of Yesterhill. It has a name, I don't quite remember it, but effectively, the spear used to belong to a tribe leader, and it has a whole history carved on its wood. And he who holds the spear rules over Yesterhill, according to a ghost that pops up. I took a few liberties with that. It's part of one of the focuses that I chose to use for this campaign. And we'll come back to that in a second. Let's talk about Chance. Chance is... Listen to me, I'm already going into Esmeralda Davenir, because Chance, that boy, she has a few choice words for him. Chance, played by our East Coast player, James, is a very interesting one. He's the pugilist of the party, and he has been nothing short of a clever asshole for almost all of our adventures. Chance has a very interesting backstory, and we don't get to see a lot of it, but We get snippets here and there. He was a traveler for a very long time, suffered a very tragic birth, believed himself to be cursed. Everybody around him believed him to be cursed, and so he was almost hanged in his youth, and that's why he has a scarf around his neck. He believes the world is a very cruel place and fate plays a very cruel hand and part in everybody's life, and so, feeling cheated, became a smuggler and has a very rich seafaring history ever since, which is why he's got a bit of a swagger wherever he walks. I can't do the voice very well. Chance and Irena were like this. They had a very romantic encounter before I took over as the DM, and unfortunately, because Irena was bitten the amount of times that she was, with the way Strahd physically asserted himself on her, and with everything going on with her brother's death and her father's death, everybody thought it best, and even I felt the character grow a bit heavy after a time, to set her aside so I could play somebody that gave me a little more joy when I played such a dreary game. And that person happened to be none other than the Huntress Esmeralda Davenier. Going back into Chance, I think some of his best moments really come from when he's trying to get clever and swindle people. I have always found that to be incredibly exciting, and we see a little bit more of that in Season 2, but unfortunately, Season 2, and I should just go ahead and say this now, was completely annihilated. It was just unsalvageable, so I'm doing an overview, and it's going to be a lot like the intro to Season 1, the journey thus far, where we have characters telling the story of what's going on, and hopefully I'll be able to pull a few narration snippets. Next up, I want to talk about some of the focuses on Barovia. For some of the things I've chosen to focus on, because Curse of Strahd has a great deal of history to it that we don't see, nor the players find out, because Strahd keeps his history very under lock and key, are the Fanes. Before Strahd conquered the land, it was a very fairy-rich world. There were elves, there were fairy, there were all kinds of plant creatures and satyrs and what have you, and there were the Fanes that were effectively like the fairy lords of the area. And then Strahd just bowled on through and was like, fuck you guys, and now we have Barovia. Because this land is under the hold of a Dark Lord, they now serve a different and very unique purpose, and I am playing into it with Strahd's connection to the land. I want to talk about is a very strong focus, and that is Strahd's relationship with Irena. There is an unusual fixation he has with Irena. Originally in the book, the whole point of Strahd biting and blooding and turning her into a vampire in the first place was so he could take her as a bride and then lock her in the fucking crypt. In a land of fives, you find a 10 that is extremely important to your backstory, which I will not disclose because my players are still likely watching this video, and you're just gonna lock that shit away? So Strahd has different plans in mind for Irena, but blooding her and briding her has not changed from that agenda. Next up, one of the things I have been focusing on and really alluding to with my preludes and Esmeralda's talks is the entrance and discovery of Dr. Rudolf Van Richten. He is the Van Helsing of this story, and by far one of the coolest characters I have ever done research on. Dr. Rudolf Van Richten believes himself the victim of a curse, and he is not wrong. Years ago, he set loose an army of zombies upon a Vistana caravan that took his son as payment in exchange for his life. He made an agreement with them in a drunken stupor, not knowing quite what it would entail. After taking his son and seeking revenge, an entity came up to him, gave him some kind of strange power over the undead, and in his vengeance, wreaked havoc and destroyed Esmeralda's caravan and family. Now you see, the mother, before dying, bade a curse upon Dr. Rudolf Van Richten. Her dying words were, "Live you forever among monsters and watch those you love die beneath their claws." He thought nothing of this first until years and years and years of monster hunting later, companions, compatriots, players from other parties died one by one to monsters, demons, golems, you name it. He has books about them all, and could tell you how to make them and how to break them all the same. But it's left this man jaded and cold in his years as he's aged in his life. A very fascinating character, and we will find out who and what he is all about in Season 2. If you would like to hear more about my take on the land of Barovia, like, comment, and subscribe below. I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Until next time, my darlings, I'm going to yeet myself to bed, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.